I'm Joel H. Brewster, and I'm no stranger to horror. And this is a podcast where I discuss the big and the small of the genre with the hopes of taking you from being a casual horror fan to a person like myself who's a spooky film fanatic. Guys, it's been a little while. I've been off writing. I've been off enjoying the summer, and we'll just get right to it. Today, we're going to be covering the movie His House, starring Wunmi Musaku and Sophie Disseru, written and directed by Remy Weeks. And with me today, I have my very best friend in the world, who I'd like to introduce themselves in the sense of what they're into, as opposed to me just fawning over how great this human being is. My best friend, Luna Meresa. Hello, how are you doing today?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good.
Introduce myself. Oh my goodness.
Tell me about yourself.
Well, I think probably the funniest thing, or like ironically funniest thing about me is that you are my best friend, and I am not really big at watching movies. So it is a little funny, but I do like movies. I just end up falling asleep through most of them, or just completely forgetting them entirely, or watching movies like way later than when they are initially released, but not His House. I'm only a year late with this one.
Yeah, you're really close to this. And you know, it's a really funny thing of this is going to be a really small and weird conversation you're probably not going to even remember saying to me. I remember we went to go see the movie Black Panther, and we were in the theaters, and this is like one of those things, I think I've told this stories to like numerous people when describing you, because it's like a really funny story to me. We're in Black Panther, and I'm like, hey, what have you seen lately? We're talking about movies. And you're like, I haven't seen anything lately whatsoever. Hey, have you seen Death Note? And you like reference an anime to me, and I was like, what? Like, it's a popular and cool anime, and I'm like, I actually need to get caught up. You're like, oh, okay, never mind. I'm like, what the hell? Like, the twist of that just fell on me so hard. I'm like, and I've never forgotten that. I'm just like, I don't watch anything. Hey, have you seen Death Note? I'm like, yeah, I need to get caught up, I guess. You're just like, you should really watch it.
So, that's amazing.
Yeah, you're into anime though.
I watch things based on one of three scenarios. Number one, I come across it, and if I've come across it, it's probably super cheesy or corny. Two, it's a recommendation from you, or three, it is a recommendation from my baby brother. And I was hesitant early on when he was recommending things, and then I've come to realize, like, no, he's always spot on. And Death Note was one of those things where he was like, hey, you got to watch this, push through the fact that this is going to be your first anime. I promise you'll be into it. And sure enough, I got hooked.
Has that like opened up your world to anime? So like from there, you've just been rocking a lot more?
No, but it is really funny because I had a similar conversation with someone at work that I'm just remembering right now. And we were talking about what we were watching or something. And I was like, oh man, I just finished Death Note. So I'm like super devastated. And he was like, okay, what? And I was like, yeah, no, it was super sick. And he was like, yeah. So he gave me one to watch that has a very slow start. So I actually haven't gone back to it. So hopefully he doesn't hear this and realize that I ignored his recommendation. But that'll be the next one I go back to.
So which one is it?
It's teens playing volleyball is all I can tell you.
Okay, well, I'll find out what that is and I'll put it in the show notes. Okay. And then we'll both watch it I'm not sure who your person is that's may or may not listen to this podcast, but just know that it's on both of our homework now and the listeners too, because it'll be in the show notes.
Okay, perfect.
So I do have some questions to ask you. Oh, just a little thing for a little inside baseball for everyone listening. This is our second time trying to record this. We had technical difficulties last week, and Luna, being the nicest person that she is, decided during the week of her birthday, 3 days away, that she would help me out and come back on the show. So I really appreciate that.
I mean, what an ultimately cool thing I get to say that I did during my week off.
It's true. I'm gonna try. Hopefully, everyone. You know what? I may edit this comment out, but I'm gonna try to get this on, like, at least on your birthday, so we can like have it be your birthday episode too. So,
pretty rad.
Yeah, I'll try my best on that one, but who knows? I might edit this comment out if I don't do it. So before we get into the movie, I did want to ask you a couple questions. One big question, because we are only a little while away, and I want to put it into your head. What are you going to be for Halloween this year?
Oh man, I don't know. I think that's the safest answer. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair.
I am super pumped. I'm also thinking about dyeing my hair, so I may have to do it before or after Halloween, depending on what I decide. But I don't know. What are you going to be? What are your options? Because I know that you probably have 35 things you've thought of already.
I've got a lot of options. Do I go the family route, right? Because like there's a lot of things that Ava would like me to be. There is an option that I did see, and it's gonna be like a really funny one that I think could work as both a family one as well as just one for me. There's a show called Killing Eve. Have you seen Killing Eve by any chance?
No.
Okay, there's a show called Killing Eve, and in the show, Jodie Comer, phenomenal actor, maybe one of the best right now. Great actor. I'll get into that in a moment. In that show, she dresses up as she kills someone dressed up as like what is it, like a German beer fest or no, she's in Amsterdam, like an Amsterdam like school dress, and then she has like a pig mask on. And I have that on a shirt, and Ava saw that shirt, and she's really into Peppa Pig right now. So she thought that shirt was hilarious. And I was like, Jetty, I can do that for Halloween, because I did cross-dress last year for Halloween. And
You did.
The theme seems like...
I love that.
Yeah, so that's one of them. The other one is another one for Ava would be... Ava loves the song Dragon Ball Durag by Thundercat. And that being Thundercat for Halloween is like really up in the air, because she loves that song so much that I think she'd lose it.
Oh, man. I mean, you can also have multiple costumes, obviously. Not that I have to be the one to say that to you. Yeah,
and I'm very excited this year because Ava's old enough to go to like the Halloween store and really appreciate it and pick out like a Halloween costume. So I am like, I think those stores are opening up soon. I really can't wait to go to one of those stores.
Yeah, that'd be pretty exciting.
Yeah. So you know what, everyone, we'll get back to you on our costumes. I'll keep you posted on mine and Luna's costume. And I'm going to ask you now, is the hair color dyeing, are you official on what color you're going to dye it yet?
No, but so for years I've wanted to dye my hair this particular, I'm not going to say it because hopefully I just do it, but yeah. I've been wanting to dye my hair this particular color. So I might just bite the bullet and do it.
If you do it, because I completely control West Coast Fringe, big shock to everybody, I will put it in my Instagram story to say that you did it. It'll be like a long reveal for everyone else here that's listening. That's going to go. I wonder if she dyed her hair. They're wondering. So yeah, all three people that know me are probably so curious. They're listening. That's my listeners. So
I know. I just mean like how many of them know me and they're probably not really going to care about my hair color, but I'm into it.
Yeah. So, well, that's the story we're going to keep in touch with. A question I did ask you last time, but I do want to ask you again this time. What is your history with horror itself? Like, you grew up watching horror. I do know that, but I want to ask you, what was the first horror movie that really scared you? Oh, I can't. So I'm going to tell you this one. I have a really bad memory, but I'm going to tell you this one. And does it classify as horror? If it scared you, I can classify it as horror. Okay, like, what scared you? What is it called? Of course, now I don't remember. This is the only movie that I can remember giving me memories. And it's a movie where all of a sudden, no one can reproduce, like literally no one. So the oldest Children of Men, that's the one. No movie has stuck with me in a frightening way more than that one. It's just so eerie. So no one can reproduce. And I think the oldest person at the time is the youngest person at the time is like 14, I think. And then a woman ends up being pregnant. And so they're trying to protect her, or so you think, or whatever. And I think it was just like the idea of like we as people really messing things up so badly that eventually our bodies are just like, no, you guys don't deserve to keep going. Like, we're going to let your time run up here. But yeah, that one I had a nightmare about it. Literally like, not even immediately after, it was like a week later. That is a very scary movie. And it's interesting too, because a lot of those themes obviously are like, go across to just like society and like, and it's been passed on to like other shows as well. Like, I believe that's also the concept in, what do you call it? That there's not in, Handmaid's Tale, that there's a problem with reproduction in that. And then like the desperation that comes from, that in Handmaid's Tale, and also like the post-apocalyptic like sort of look of the world and the nihilistic views of everyone in that world. So they just all kind of given up, right? It is like a really scary movie that way. That was a great movie. Yeah, it was. I like, even now thinking about it, I'm like, man, that feels like so long ago that I watched it, but the feeling that brought on is still very real. Yeah, and the feeling of it was one of those Recently, I just read a post actually on a Facebook group of like what was the most what movie gave you the most anxiety while watching, and I feel like that's like one of those movies that did that for me because the whole time you're concerned for the main spoiler alert for anyone that hasn't seen a movie that came out in 2004, I think. The whole time you're just watching Clive Owen like protect that young woman that holds like this baby, and it's really intense because it's like the last pregnant woman on the planet. And just a lot of that is really scary to see, like if if she dies and with everything that happens, and it's kind of the end of civilization. So yeah, that was really an intense movie.
Yeah, and immigration, I think, is also a pretty big factor in that movie too.
Mm-hmm. Which does tie into our movie His House with both factors. I do have some immigration questions to actually ask you because I think this will, as we both immigrated here. Did you have any preconceived notions of when you immigrated here of like how things were going to be, or were you too young to have like what thoughts of like what Canada kind of was going to be like?
Yeah, I would have had no idea. Like I was so little, and I'm trying to think. My middle brother was 2, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I thought anything outside of like this is my family. Like me and my family are going somewhere. I'd be surprised if I actually thought about like what I thought life in Canada would be like.
Yeah, like how it would be different. Yeah. It's interesting because when I was researching for this movie, one thing that Remy Weeks said was he was blown away that a lot of the immigrants were sold on the artistic background of England, like the Charles Dickens and like the great poets, the great writers, and the beautiful like literature from like decades past, right, or centuries past. Yeah. A lot of immigrants were like sold on that like sort of beauty from England, and then when they got here, it's like a concrete jungle, which is like fascinating for I suppose like a lot of people immigrating here, and it really showed in this movie too, right? Except they kind of moved out of obvious desperation of a situation they're in, so I guess it wouldn't have that sort of rosy colored thing. But even the house they got put in was just the worst state ever.
Yeah. Do you remember if you came to Canada thinking or expecting something?
No, I didn't. I was 3 years old when I came here, and I was kind of just moved away from my my cousins and stuff like that. And I just remember like missing cousins. And I just came here, and I remember. I don't know if when like you don't know if you remember something or if something was just told to you and then you remember from that. Yeah. I was given chewing gum for the first time in the airport in England. Or sorry, in Canada, in the Canada airport. And that's like one of the first
what you remember.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Do you remember the flavor?
I don't remember the flavor, but it's weird. Like, I don't think I had even candy before that point, but like, if you know me now,
yeah,
I love candy.
Been a little while since you could say that you don't have candy.
Exactly. It was a slippery slope. And now I love candy. So it all went downhill.
That one time at the airport.
Another question I actually have, and like this is, I'm not sure how this will tie the movie, but just an immigration question here is having family that lives outside of Canada, whether because I know you do, whether they live in Eritrea or if they live in like other like the States or anything. Do you have any family that have like weird perceptions of life in Canada? Because I do. I was just wondering if you do too, because I have.
Yeah, you know what? I think, and not necessarily weird, I guess, depending on what part of Canada you're in, but amongst my family, Canada is definitely like where we're nice, obviously. It's really cold is obviously a part of it too. And you're like, no, actually Victoria's just fine. And trying to think of like so a lot of my cousins are in the US or in England or Eritrea. And I think, what is it? There's something else that we always go back and forth on. But yeah, kindness, weather, and shoot, it's going to drive me nuts that I don't remember.
My cousins, the animals thing is really weird for them. My cousins are in England, and one of my cousins said, okay, this is a little ironic because of who I am as a person right now and what I have in my possession, but bear with me on this. One of my cousins said, isn't that the place where you guys have giant spiders like tarantulas? Okay.
That's hilarious.
I own tarantulas coincidentally. When I was asked this in 2011, I did not. And I was like, no, we don't have giant tarantulas. Like, what? That's such a weird thing to think. But now I totally do have them in my possession, but that's outside of that. But
that's so funny.
So weird, right? Like the giant spiders. But like, I guess because we have a lot of big animals, but like, I don't know. Like my family lives in England. We don't have foxes running around that just attack people randomly. Oh, we have coyotes, I guess. God damn it.
Well, and it's so funny that it's just spiders were the
really weird statement from her. I thought it stuck with me. Two giant spiders. Like, no, not really. Where'd you hear that?
Yeah. I wonder if it was like, you know, a comment in a movie or.
Yeah. What movie talks about Canada though?
Yeah, true. Oh, you know what? The other thing that always comes up with my family is the like, and I think we've convinced most of them now, but it was like all celebrities and entertainers come from America. And I was like, are you guys crazy? There's so many Canadians that are in movies that you probably don't even realize are Canadian.
Oh, 100%. That reminds me when I went to Brazil, and everyone listening, we're going to get back to the movie. Just bear with us here. When I went to Brazil, there was a whole conversation, and it's a conversation I'll never forget, where I was listing off Canadian celebrities. And at the time, no one knew who any of the celebrities were. And then I said, like, I was like, do you guys know who, like, this is a weird one to bring up, but I was like, do you guys know who Avril Lavigne was? The one celebrity they all knew was Avril Lavigne at the time, which is an old sentence, but still so weird to me. And I'll never forget it. Like, I was like, what? Like Jim Carrey? Like, no. And I'm like, what?
Oh, that's hilarious. Skater Boy was just a hit.
It was a smash hit. So, yeah. Toronto born. I think she's from Toronto. Avril Lavigne.
Yeah, I don't know. Definitely Ontario, though, I think.
Yeah, I think she's definitely from out that way.
That's too funny. All right, Avril, you're our claim to fame. Yeah,
hope she listens to this podcast. She might. I don't think so.
I mean, she might.
Hey, Biff Naked might, because she follows me on Instagram, so it's a possibility. She may be listening to this. So,
Biff, are you Naked. Canadian?
She is Canadian, and
no way.
Yeah, and I loved her when I was younger, and I'm keeping this in the edit because I still think she's amazing. One thing, as you mentioned actually before, when I was talking actually about nightmares, when you mentioned like Children of Men being a movie that gave you nightmares, one thing that I found interesting about this movie was that in a way it's split into two movies for each character. So for Wunmi Musaku, the movie is like a visceral dream that you don't want to wake up from because she doesn't want the reality of her situation. And then for Sophie Disseru's character, it's like a vivid nightmare, which I found fascinating because I've had both, right? Like everyone has had both. You've had like visceral dreams that are so good you don't want to wake up from. And then you're like, this, have you ever had that? Like where it's like a lucid dream where you're just like, oh, I know this isn't real. God, I wish I could stay here.
Yeah.
That's the worst. But I was wrestling with this. I'm like, I don't know who had it worse for these two characters. So I'm like, both those two things are just so tough. Like the nightmare because somebody Disseru's character does find out that the monster can't actually hurt him in this movie. And I found that I'm like, that's tough though. Like the fear of that is still so scary when you're in a nightmare, right? Like when you were having the nightmare of Children of Men, that still probably felt so real. But it's on par with the visceral dream. So I found that like an interesting way that the director made like both really, really scary.
Yeah, well, and like even it kicking off with his nightmare and him coming out of it, like trying to protect her, obviously, by being like, no, it's fine. Like, but I can't even remember what he says, but he's like clearly reliving it and then wakes up and tells her, that he was dreaming of their wedding night, I think, right?
Yeah.
Even that feeling of like, oh man, that panic.
Yeah. Yeah, just like I'm thankful that I don't have like really lucid nightmares like that, but like to even have that like the screaming, like the night terrors of screaming and stuff like that, which is one of those things that I never really thought of nightmares that much in this context until recently, actually with my daughter, because Ava has nightmares. She's 2, right? So she'll have like nightmares and just be screaming at the top of her lungs.
Oh.
And like to wake up to that is like one of those things where I'm like, imagine being woken up to a nightmare where you're screaming at the top of your lungs and you're crying. I'm like, that'd be so tough. Like, I feel so bad for her every time that happens. Like, that's just the worst thing ever.
Yeah. Well, and even like, even with lucid dreaming where you're like, I know this isn't actually happening. I know I'm dreaming. It still doesn't take those feelings away.
No, like your body in its entirety, like the same thing what happened with Sophie Disseru's character is like his body in its entirety felt like it was going through those things, like to the point that like it wouldn't like the I want to say it's a witch, like demon, the monster,
Yeah.
really kind of showed him it's like, yeah, even though I can't touch you, it doesn't really matter. I can live rent free in your head and just make your life terrible. Which is it was such a powerful, interesting monster that was like a Freddy Krueger sort of style monster. But yeah, it was just your worst possible scenario.
Especially since they'd survived such physically difficult things too. Like you would think, okay, the physical struggle is over, so everything else has got to be easy peasy. Like, we've done the actual hard part. But it's like, no, you can be tormented.
Right. And what makes you realize with everything they went through before they got to the house, right? That when they got to the house and it was a garbage heap, it was terrible. They did not care. Yeah. Or even like the rudeness of the people that like, I don't want to say probation officers, the people that were giving their first interview, they were being so polite. They were like, kept themselves like really like, they were smiling and everything like that. These people couldn't give a damn about like what they like weren't even like looking at them. And they just kept that attitude up. And because you had to keep appearances. And then when they got to this place that was like a trash heap, they still were like, whatever, this is so much better than where we just came from, given the situation we just got out of. And then to like live through the ghost and what a battle.
Yeah. And then you almost wonder like what battle was harder.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that you can almost, the thing that I'd say is that the battle they came from would still be harder because it's what kept them being used against them. Like the ghost wasn't giving them new fears. It was giving them like fears of the past. And like, that's how bad they were. When the ghost can do whatever you wanted, really.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be so hard to continue. I guess, especially before they kind of acknowledge and accept, it would be so hard to continue battling demons that you're not even willing to acknowledge.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what makes it such a scary movie. It's really just a haunting, everything about like, and I believe I've said this before, but like the concept of the movie works either way, right? Like you can remove the ghost element of it, and it's still such a scary, eye-opening movie. It's one of those things too that I feel like that given what's happened in Afghanistan this past little while here, that I feel that if this movie were released this week, I think that it'd be looked through with different eyes, even though like the atrocities that happened in this part of Africa, that are happening at times, that I feel like it's one of those things, right? It's just like when you visually have it like bombarded in the news of like similar situations, like the plane, you see everyone jumping on the plane, and then you see in this movie with everyone trying to jump on the car, that you just kind of, it puts you in that place, right? Like it just kind of, you really can viscerally see it.
Yeah. And you can almost feel the desperation in each action, like trying to get onto a packed bus, that panic is there, that like survival kicks in with, and you don't even have 2 seconds to think about what's actually happening or, strategize a real plan.
That's what was really interesting about this movie, is that you could see where Wunmi Musaku's character was mad at her husband's character, and it was understandable. But the desperation of it all is just like, you're kind of put into his shoes. I couldn't really see myself doing something different, but feeling wrong about it. Do you know what I mean? Like I felt like really bad for like what he did, obviously. But it was a very interesting way to unfold the story, I thought, because it took its time to get to that. And I really thought it was something really different happened that caused them to have this monster following them. Yeah.
Well, and I think also too, the idea of like him acting as the provider, protector, like there was no other decision for him in that time. The fact that he was able to come to such a quick decision to then save their life is heroic. It just obviously, because we know how it goes, there is an element that doesn't feel so heroic about it.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing that worked with this movie so well was you could remove the ghost in a sense that it could have all been psychological, and this could have been a movie about survivor's guilt, which I'm sure a lot of people have in this situation would definitely feel like, why me? And like, you're gonna have to relive the situation of like what you did to survive and like how you survived. So yeah, definitely a tough and very interesting watch. One thing I definitely wanted to talk about too was the scene that really stuck out to me. And I talked to you about this before. is when she's lost in the city.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And she gets lost. First off, she's given like a paper map, which you give me that right now. You could literally give me a paper map of my own block. And if I had to follow this paper map of my own block, I'm going to get lost because I'm that type of person. I'm the person that was definitely born in the right decade because I have such a reliance on technology that I would need a map, like a paper map. I'm getting lost.
You and me both.
Yeah. So I felt really bad for her that whole time. And that was like, for me, one of the scariest scenes because the anxiety of that really stuck with me.
Yeah. And I feel like because there was such a lead up to her leaving the house that we automatically felt anxious about her leaving the house. But it was like adding in the fact that she clearly gets lost and then has this conceivably reasonable or not reasonable, reliable piece of paper directing her. You're just like, oh, something is going to go wrong. And then coming up to a group of teenage boys.
Yeah. And given what's going on in England at any given time, or turn on the news on England, or I think even Dublin, like I recently heard of a terrible story that just like these gangs of teenagers, just regardless of any race or anything, it's just gangs of teenagers that are just roaming around that cause trouble. Several so it's just like, it was one of those things I was so scared for her when she approached them because those kids were just sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, where are you supposed to be? Like, you're not like, you're just sitting there doing nothing. Like, don't get me wrong. I've been a teenager, like hanging out with my friends, just doing nothing too. But like, it was a scary situation to watch her go up to those kids, but also to have her walking around in circles because those complexes are just absolute mazes.
Well, and then relying on, these kids. I think also too, because they're wearing uniforms, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They're wearing school uniforms.
Yeah. And there's something even about that like is calming because I think, and I mean, I should probably look this up before I say it, but I think in Nigeria, private schools also have uniforms. So there's probably, I said Nigeria, in Sudan, not Nigeria. Well, maybe Nigeria as well. But I think in Sudan that like private schools are also attached to uniforms. Mm-hmm. So you're already maybe feeling even more connected to these 3 Black kids that look like you. And you're expecting that there's, a bit of maturity and kindness because you know that their family's probably well off. So they're going to a nice school. And then just to still have such an uncomfortable and mean.
So mean.
Yeah.
So mean, like racist, realistically. Like, I mean, like, and the thing is too, you actually brought a really good point. She worked at a school. So like, that would probably be I think that was a school.
Oh yeah.
That's like, that'd be like very eye-opening too, right? Like, oh, great, students. I know students. I've worked with students. So you'd be kind of, and that's probably the first school kids I can think of that she'd seen since the obviously hard tragedy that happened to her before. So she's probably excited a bit. Yeah. Like you could see, like, instead of being like the sigh of relief, right? Like, oh, kids, like you said, that like kind of look like me and they're in school uniforms. And then to have such a harsh reaction to it would just be really terrible.
Yeah. And it's funny. I think we said this last time where it was really hard to tell if they were giving her, like the third kid that chimed in, if he was giving her the proper directions. Like it was really hard to tell until the next scene shows her at the clinic.
Yeah. It sounds like he gave her right directions.
Yeah, hopefully. But I realized, because I rewatched it today, and I realized that the same kid that ends up giving her maybe the right directions is also the one that yells at her at the end. So it's like, is there a bit of peer pressure there where he was like, okay, yeah, I did the right thing and gave her the right directions, but I was still kind of mean to her, guys. Don't worry, I'm still cool.
Yeah. And a lot of that bothers me because, and I'm sure this has happened to you, but I know it's happened to you. Have you ever been somewhere, as we both are visible minorities, have you ever been out somewhere and another visible minority, not from here, they could be from anywhere, just like zooms in and approaches you to ask you a question like that? Like
totally.
Like, yeah, that's happened to me a billion times. And it's like, I can't picture being mean to regardless of who you are, I just can't picture being mean to a random person coming out to me. I think that's regardless like what ethnicity or whatever you are. But I feel like more of an obligation as not even as a visible minority, I feel more of an obligation if I live somewhere, if someone asks me and they're not from here and I can tell they're not from here, I'm like, oh man, I do not want to be the person that gives you a bad experience with this. Yeah,
as a representation of like your city or your, whatever it is that you're representing in that time. Yeah, I don't want you to end up lost or be like, oh, all people from Victoria are so rude. Mm-hmm. But especially if, especially if someone is either visiting or like, or I can tell you've immigrated, or like there's something about this that's all new for you. I totally want to help make this as comfortable as possible. How mean of these kids to do otherwise.
It's another interesting thing I just thought of to ask you. When you've gone back home to Eritrea, have you had someone come up to you that still thinks you live there until you started talking? Because this happened to me in Barbados. So I'm wondering if that's happened to you. Like someone just like, oh yeah, you're from here, and just started like talking to you about like whatever. Has that happened to you?
No, like the last time I went, the first time I went, I was a teenager, and I was very clearly there visiting with because like my American cousins were there. My dad was with us and me and my siblings. The second most recent time that I went as an adult, and it was every part of my visit. It was very clear that I was not a resident because I stayed in a hotel for most of the time. I was with other girls I was clearly with folks that were not from there. So it was like, even upon seeing us, there was no confusing it. But I do remember getting into a cab, and there were three of us, me, the two other girls, and then there was a local guy that was with us. And so we call the cab over and we get in and we ask him how much it's going to be to get to whatever place. And he obviously is going to rip us off. Sorry, Eritreans, for calling us out. But he obviously is going to rip us off and charge way more because can now tell that we're not residents. And the guy gets in the car and he doesn't ask or say anything. And we get there and the guy's like, okay, like pay up. And the guy in the back gives him, what the ride was actually worth and not what we were quoted. And he was like, no, I said this much. And he says it in English, thinking like, oh, you guys don't even understand the language. Yeah. And the guy goes, no, I know what you quoted the girls. You've quoted them that because they're visiting. I live here. You're not ripping us off. Thank you and goodbye. I was like, oh man, it be your own people sometimes.
Right. The same thing happened to me. And that's wow. The same thing happened to me in Barbados, but I didn't have someone from Barbados with me. So I ended up paying things because I'm also very socially awkward. So I ended up paying things like twice. Yeah. Just knowing
terrible.
I've been drinking. I know I'm getting ripped off right now, but
yeah. And you're like, okay, have it. It's funny too, because in the beginning that was totally my mentality. I was like, well, like these are my people. I'm like, what difference does it make to me? And then it was probably like the second week and I was like, no, you're not ripping me off. Screw you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Did you ever get, I wonder if this happened to you. Okay. When I was in Barbados, we used to have a lot of people come up to, I'd watch them go up to tourists. Let me just preface this with anyone. If you're ever going to travel, I highly recommend going to Barbados. It's a very beautiful place. It's very affordable and the food there is absolutely wonderful. What I'm going to say next isn't even that mean, but I just want to preface that with one of my favorite places in the world. So I used to see people on the beach that would like go to offer like buy like necklaces, whatever. And they would go to like each person and they'd be like, oh yeah. And they quote on price and try to really sell them. And then they would visually, this has never happened to me before as a visual minority. They'd visually look at me and they would think I was from there. And they'd be, hey, blah, blah. And I'd be like, I'm actually not from here. It was like, your family's from here though, right? I'm like, yeah. And they would like try to offer like a better deal. But it was like really interesting to be there and have people visually see my face and visually notice I was Bayesian, which I've never had happen to me culturally anywhere else in the world, realistically, which makes sense.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
But even like, is there a city? I'm trying to think of a city that's heavily populated.
With Black people?
Yeah. Like I wonder if in Toronto.
I've only been in Toronto Airport, but like, Los Angeles, even like where I was specifically wasn't heavily populated by Black people. Yeah. You know where it was? Paris. When I was in Paris, there was a lot of Black people there. I used to that was interesting. I had a lot of nods there, which I thought was really funny because I was like, what? It's like so many Black people here.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm trying to think of like, I definitely get called out for maybe not always Eritrean, but usually someone can tell if I'm Eritrean, Ethiopian, or Somalian. Like it'll be one of those three. Mm-hmm. If I'm somewhere like Toronto or Vancouver, but.
So do you get a lot of Eritreans? Like, do you get a lot of any of those three ethnicities coming up to you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like I remember being in the Toronto airport and I was landing in Toronto. So I was staying and the sweetest woman is just chatting with me that works at the airport. And she was like, "Oh, are you smiling?" I was like, "No." And she was like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "No, I'm positive." And she was like geared up to get me a job at the airport and everything. I was like, "No, I don't even live in Toronto. Like I live in Victoria." And she was like, "And you're sure you're not smiling?" I was like, "I'm 1,000% certain, but I appreciate the insistence." But it's cool when someone's like, "No, you look so much like me or my family or whatever it is."
Yeah.
Be able to pinpoint it.
See, that's what makes that's what makes that scene so heartbreaking for me, right? Where she goes up to the kids, she's like, "Oh, those kids kind of look like me." And imagine if you were mean to that lady, or imagine if I was mean to those people that came up to me on the beach in Barbados. Like, that's something about that just really like sits with me like so wrong as one of the more jarring scenes I've seen in film in the past like couple of years.
Well, and even them telling her to go, I think do they say go back to Africa or go back to where you came from?
To Africa.
And it's like, you guys, where's you three people? Like, what is going on for you three? But
yeah, that it's interesting too, because before this we were talking about like the Black Lives Matter protests and such, and just like how we were affected by that. And it's interesting too, because I feel like this movie was a very interesting look at like race without really talking about it that heavily. It was a lot of microaggressions, which became the topic of like the Black Lives Matter movement. It was a lot of microaggressions came up as a topic too. And I feel like this movie coming out in January, as opposed to coming out it was around this time last year, right? Like around August. It was definitely the summer that like a lot of the protests.
I want to say it started shortly after COVID did, or like maybe February, March.
I feel like
of last year.
Yeah. It was May. Right.
Okay.
So it was late. I think it was like May 2020 is when George Floyd was murdered. So it was obviously a couple months after that, I think the protests started happening, but like, so kind of the summer. What I was going to ask, because I told you, I was like, oh, hold on, I want to ask you something on air. And what I wanted to ask you was, during that time, were you asked a lot from people that were you told a lot from people that weren't Black things they were doing in order did that come up to you? Did that happen to you a lot?
It's funny because I remember you saying you got a lot of apologies and a lot of like, "Hey, don't worry, I'm doing stuff."
Yeah, I'm donating. I'm like, and like a lot of apologies. Like it was all in like, we're living in Canada. So like, it was all very well-meaning and very like beautiful sentiment. And like the people that did it are very like kind people that I'm still friends with and everything like that. But I did have it from people that I'm not friends with. And I felt that was like a little weird, but
yeah, no, I got a lot of, which I don't know if it just speaks to the relationships I maybe have with the people, but it was a lot of like, "Hey, tell me about what's wrong with this situation," or, "Hey, I read this thing. Can you explain that to me?" But I didn't get any apologies, and I didn't get anyone telling me like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing." I did have a really good, and I know he's going to listen to this, but I did have a really good, passionate conversation with a really close friend of mine. And it was a heavy conversation because I think it's something to obviously keep up with the news and read things, and you look to different people that are in the public eye that are speaking about it, and some things may resonate with you. But then if you are talking to your friend who is Black, and you're talking about this thing that's affecting the whole world, and the whole world is shaken up, or hopefully the whole world is shaken up, because we all should be. And I just remember having this like really passionate conversation to the point where afterwards I was like, "Hey, I love you, and I know that you love me." Like I would never for a second think anything about these questions that you're having or these thoughts that you're having. But I'm so grateful that you're having that conversation with me and not some girl that you work with that maybe doesn't know you or your intentions or what you're trying to get to. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad that I can be the one that tells you like, "No, that's absolutely ridiculous. Please don't ever say that out loud again." But it was a lot of, like those sorts of conversations of like, why is this sentence wrong? Even though it seems like it's a good sentence to say, why does that sentence actually mean something not so nice?
Yeah. And the thing is too, like not everyone is as fortunate to have like someone, I feel like yourself, to like have a conversation with them like that. And it's so needed. It's so needed with a lot of people that just don't understand what they're saying is wrong. But it's the worst that you had to carry the weight of having to have that conversation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and it wasn't like it's an easier conversation to have with people that are close to you.
Yes.
It's a bit harder when you're trying to tread this, and it's like the same thing that we talk about just in general, where there are these stereotypes. So you don't want to, you're so cautious of them. And so you're trying to have these conversations without like coming off as like the angry Black woman, or, you know, someone that just screams race, or whatever it is, right? Whatever those comments are that can come of it. But you're having this conversation with someone that doesn't know you well enough to know, like, oh, you are just passionate. That's what this is. This is an anger coming at me. Or, you know, these are lived experiences, not just you defending all Black people against all non-people of color. But
yeah, you know what? And that really does tie into this movie in that sense, that a lot of Sylvia Dister's character, the husband's character, throughout this, you could see him holding in a lot when he was visually out. He had to hold in a lot of like rage or like confusion or anything he had in the situation when he was talking to like the people with the house and everything like that, because he didn't want to come across as like angry or violent or jeopardized situation, because that's kind of what they thought of him, or at least the perception that I think he'd be within the right perception he didn't want to put out there into the world, because you don't want to be that stereotype.
Well, and like, yeah, just following all these rules, trying to make sure that they're one of the good ones, whatever that means.
Yes. Which was a very clear comment that was put out there. I thought this movie just nailed it. I really did. I thought that it was, to your earlier topic of, I'm trying not to say the person's name, to your earlier topic of having a passionate conversation with your friend, that I feel like movies like this, I feel like movies like Get Out, I feel like a lot of these social movies that some people that are not part of the same ethnic group may not like because they feel like they're too heavy-handed. I feel like these movies do a good job of having these conversations so we don't have to, in a sense. You know what I mean? Like even about immigration in this one, I thought this was a very good way to talk about immigration, so that people can kind of understand what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's funny because obviously throughout the movie, we talked about microaggressions, but even the moments where it's like it feels uncomfortable, and I may not necessarily be able to pinpoint it, but like, I don't like this feeling that I'm having right now. Like that, the woman watching him from the window, and like all those little moments, it's just like, there's nothing we can really label this as other than uncomfortable.
It's interesting with that house specifically too, because it really does build up that the house itself is haunted. For a lot of the movie, it's like, oh, this house is haunted. And it looked like it was abandoned. So it's like, oh, it looks like a lot of families came here and it was abandoned, before you realize that like the ghost is more connected to the people as opposed to the house.
Yeah.
And even the title kind of leads you to think that like it's a possessive ghost and it's their house. But so I felt like early on in the movie that the woman that kept staring out the window had seen numerous families come in there, of like numerous Black families or numerous immigrant families come to that house and then leave. But then it kind of revealed that she kind of seemed crazy too, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Like a crazy, like busybody, which is like, you should just leave, just sit there smoking, holding her cat. Like she just, yeah. Like that was her whole day of just sitting there smoking, holding her cat. What a life.
Yeah, right?
What a life. Just to be that busy, just living your whole life doing that.
Yeah, I can think of like 35 million other things that would be more interesting, but yeah, definitely one way to do it. Yeah.
Another thing I definitely do want to get on here, because like I said, we did have some of these conversations before, is Netflix. Netflix chooses some amazing films, and outside of horror, which I have thought lately they've done some great horror. I'm going to give a shout out to Netflix and some of their horror movies. His House was really good. The Fear Street trilogy has been really good, and A Classic Ghost Story, I think, is the other one that our classic horror story, which recently just saw out of Germany, out of Italy, I think it was really good. Anyways, I feel like that they nail horror in one area, but there is one other area that I definitely do want to talk to you about that they do nail, and that's their teen romcoms.
Yes.
Which has to be on here on record, because I do actually have someone that works for Netflix that I know may listen to this because they follow my West Coast Strange account. Anyways, their teen romcoms are phenomenal. And there's one in particular that I know you're a big fan of. Would you like to say the title of it?
Yeah. Well, first I'd like to give a bit of backstory and say there's a couple of us that were talking about movies, and Joel in his infinite curiosity, asked the question of, is there a movie that you think was perfect beginning to end? And so I obviously struggled because, like I confessed to earlier, I'm not a big movie watcher. So everyone gives their answers and I think this through and then I nail it. And the first, To All the Boys, was perfect, beginning to end.
Yeah, it's flawless.
Absolutely perfect. The trilogy, not perfect, but that first one was phenomenal.
Trilogy is a 99%. Okay? It's got that 1% off that I can give you. That's a 1%. 1% off the one thing.
It's less than 1%. I mean, it's more than 1% off. Like, there's no way, but.
Okay, I'm going to hop into another one too, just as a comparison. And if you're listening and you're a horror fan and you don't watch these, you know what? Drop your guard for a second and just get into Laura Jean's life, into All the Boys Love Me. It's a phenomenal trilogy. But I recently just watched The Kissing Booth, the third one, and you know what? Those are like the demon, like opposite of these movies. Those are the opposite. Have you seen those three?
No, I haven't. But it's funny because I saw you posted on Instagram, I think, and I thought, oh wow, I can't believe there's three now. I should totally watch it.
Oh, have you seen the first one?
No.
They're so bad. I want you to, you've got time off right now. And if you're listening to this out there and you have some time to do a comparison of watching 16 rom-coms, if you have this time, watch them like back to back, because I think that like The Kissing Booth, I truly do believe they're like the evil version of the To All the Boys Love Me trilogy. It's like everything about them is so toxic and wrong, and they make me so mad. But they're a fun hate watch. Do
you know what else is? If we're gonna do good hate watches, have you watched Ginny and Georgia?
I haven't yet. Is it good?
Oh, okay. It's like, I mean, it's good and terrible all at the same time. Is
it like the evil version of what's the other one we like? Never Have I Ever?
It's definitely not that at all. Okay. You'll keep watching it just to see how it ends, or at least that's where I got to.
Oh, you know I will.
Never Have I Ever is just, it's a slow start, but it's phenomenal. And then obviously To All the Boys is just perfect.
To All the Boys is perfect.
Ginny and Georgia does not fall under that perfect spectrum, but it is interesting. And I will watch the second one when it comes out. I'll say that much.
Okay. I have a question here on, I'm sure Ginny and Georgia does this too. Is there relationships in that show too? I'm imagining there is.
There are, yeah.
Yeah. Is there cheating in those ones too?
So it's a little complicated. Ginny and Georgia, it's a mother-daughter. Okay. I can't even remember which one's which. Georgia, I think, is the mom. Ginny's the daughter. And then there's a brother as well, but his name doesn't get into the title. And it's a mom that's starting over with her two kids. Okay. And she's widowed. And then she moves to a small town with her kids and is kind of starting over. And so you kind of see that. But I don't know if there is cheating, and I can only say that because I don't really know that either of them really commit to anyone.
Okay, well, I don't want you to get into it further just because now I really want to see it. Yeah. This is even for our listeners that I don't want to spoil it for. You guys you get stuff spoiled, but I really want to see the show. So probably more on the next episode on whether or not I saw that. But
I can't wait to hear.
I will have hot takes on that, I'm sure. Yes. Yeah, I'll end this topic in 1 second, but the girl that's actually in the other show in Never Have I Ever, which if you're listening to us, you should watch that too, because it's really good. It's a good series. The main girl's actually Canadian. So
no way.
Yeah. Debbie.
Awesome.
That's not her real name, but she's Canadian. I just found that out, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. That show's amazing. I really like her. I think she's great. I think screw it, I'll just say it. I think the age difference between her and the main guy is not ideal, but outside of that, the show's good.
I'm gonna look that up right after this now.
Yeah, it's better in the second season than it was in the first season, where Netflix, you should really consider some things, because what the hell? But
I can't wait to look it up, but I can only imagine.
Yeah, what the hell, Netflix? If you guys are listening to this, first of all, buy my movies, but second of all, what the hell?
Yeah, buy his movies and then make sure everyone's age appropriate if there's any sort of chemistry.
Yeah, but truly, I do think that one thing I do like about Netflix is a streaming service, and I don't work for Netflix yet or anything like that, But I do like that they are choosing these interesting stories from like all over the globe, but also a lot of representation across the Netflix movies. Like His House is one of those films that I would have loved to see in theaters, and I would have loved to go to theaters, but I know they're not going to put in theaters because they have to save room for 10 Fast and the Furious movies, or like The Rock movies, or
another movie about war.
Or another movie about war. Huh. Yeah. We're getting really deep now. But yeah, anyways.
I would say never have I ever. Hey, and you know what? We've circled back to immigration because they immigrate from India early on in that movie.
It's a very important part of Never. That's another thing actually really I liked about that. It was weird when I was watching His House. I thought that was interesting between Sophie Disser's character in His House and the dad in Never Have I Ever. Just the joy of the possibility of living in England in His House, and LA in Never Have I Ever. I thought I like that. I like that joy of possibility that I think my dad really has too.
It's funny. I was just going to ask, do you know who sparked immigration between your parents?
Oh, I think it was my mom. I think it was my mom. My mom came here because my mom has a sister here. Shout out to my Auntie Heather, my Uncle Leon, and my cousins Michael and Mark, who probably aren't listening to the show, but shout out to you guys. Love you guys. So we lived with them for a little while. So I think my mom was the one that sparked it. And then we came over here. Do you know who sparked it for you guys?
Oh yeah, 1,000% my dad.
Yeah.
My dad is just like, he's such a dreamer, and he like even our whole immigration story and how it came to be is just such a dream. Like it's not real, which is just, if you know my dad, 1,000% the way that things would unfold for my dad.
Yeah, that's beautiful. He's always smiling too. So I feel like the world kind of opens up to you when you're just a like optimistic person in that sense.
Yeah, it must, right?
Yeah.
And I don't even know, I should ask my mom, but I don't even know if she cared to immigrate or it was just like, yeah, sure. I'd be curious.
Which seems to be the case in like, because it's, yeah, now you mentioned that, like, now that I mentioned that, sorry, that my mom was the one to immigrate, but in multiple of these stories here, it seems to be the dad that has the immigration dream.
Yeah, the driving force behind it.
Yeah. I feel that a lot of that comes down to, you do see a lot of the realist nature in both like the fictional world. I feel like both in like, that's just a lot to put on women. I was going to say, you said realistic, the more the realistic nature of like the less dreamy nature. I was like, that's a lot to put on women though. I was like trying to rephrase that, but in the context of these fictional stories, that's what seemed to happen. Wunmi Musaku's character, as well as I can't remember Debbie's mom's name in Never Have I Ever. That seemed kind of be the case. I love how they didn't make them, because film studios and like writers have a big problem with making women buzzkills. They made them realistic. They're just like, hey, yeah, it's nice here, but you're not thinking of this and this, which doesn't make it, because I feel like a lot of up until the goddamn 90s and even now, they make women and stuff buzzkills, but now it's in a sense that I was a fan of how they did it in both His House and Never Have I Ever, how the mom was actually both moms were really realistic. Yeah. It was like, hey, it's fine. It's fun. And I can open up and like understand like why you're enjoying this, but like, let's be realistic here. This is what's the real nature of the world.
Yeah. And their eye is always on, at least for these two, like caring for the family unit. Mm-hmm. Like even in His House, she's the only one that we see talking to their daughter, I'll say, mm-hmm. And promising her that she'll be safe and she'll take care of her. Like we only see her do that. Yeah.
We really do, because it's interesting with the way that they ended up with the daughter is that Sophie Disser's character is just kind of as a survival mechanism, and then Wunmi Musaku's character goes, okay, yeah, we're past the survival part, even though they're in the midst of it. We need to actually worry about this person. This new entity is with our family now. This is our family now. Yeah. And it was just such an interesting flip over to watch her character too. I haven't said this in this podcast, but she is one of my favorite actors right now. I absolutely love her, and I will literally watch her in anything. She's been in Loki recently, and I loved her in that. And she was in, what did I just see her in? Loki, this, and Oh, I'm blanking right now, but she's in something else recently I just saw, and she truly is like one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, I 1000% want to see her in more. It's crazy that she, like, I feel like line for line, she said fewer lines than he did, but I just felt so much of what she was feeling. And I feel like it was almost exclusively through her eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she has a really powerful way of acting, like mainly just through her eyes, I feel. Lovecraft Country was the other thing. I had to look that up.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Oh, what the heck? She was in Batman vs Superman too. Now I can remember on that too. She was in the courtroom scene. Oh, wow. I've been seeing her everywhere.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Well, she's, now that I've gotten you on my show, my next dream guest is her. Now that I've got my number one dream guest, which was you. Now my next dream guest.
This charm. Yeah, let's do it. I'd love to hear her talk about this movie.
I would love
actually
that.
Any of her work.
I would absolutely love that. Here. So if you're listening, it's going to tag her to this podcast.
You should be like, so if you're listening, I guess I can do this with you in like 6 to 8 months, you know? I guess.
I would honestly book my schedule around it. I would take time off work. This is a plea at this point, just because I want to hear everything about her beautiful career that is blossomed for her eyes. This is going to be a sentence here that's, I want her to, if you are listening, Miss Musaku, this is a compliment. I have no idea in what world, and I say this with respect to the movie that you're going to be in coming up, in what world were you, and I cannot for the life of me remember the other actress's name, but she's from Letterkenny. They play best friends in this movie, and the lead actor is Anna Kendrick.
It's amazing.
No disrespect to Anna Kendrick. But I mean, no disrespect to Anna Kendrick. I've never been more mad at seeing the casting of a movie in my life. But I think it's called Alice Darling. It's like a Femme Fatale movie, and she's in it. And I've never been more rattled by seeing, like, I'm like, oh, like her, like it's her and this character from Letterkenny, who's this actor from Letterkenny whose name escapes me this one time. I'll post the movie in the show notes. When I saw that those two were playing best friends and that Anna Kendrick was the lead, I wanted to throw something through a wall. I was like, whatever the side story spinoff is, that needs to be happening. That needs to be the movie. Anyways.
I can't wait to watch this movie.
Yeah, I'm going to watch this movie. I haven't seen the movie's not even out yet, but I just saw it casting and I was mad. I was just like, what the hell is going on?
Riot.
So,
although we'll watch it and it'll be lovely.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I'm going to be definitely promoting and talking about that movie when it does come out. Before I let you go here, because it is your birthday week, and I feel like I've been keeping you from birthday stuff, because I know you're doing big birthday stuff right now. Yeah,
laundry. I mean, it's major.
Yeah, so you didn't promise me on this podcast episode, you did in the previous one, so I'm going to make you promise me on this one. First, my question is, do you believe in ghosts yourself?
Absolutely.
Okay. With that, do you promise me to go on a ghost walk tour at some point this October or some point during the spooky season? Absolutely.
Are you kidding?
Okay, I just want everyone to hear that here first and have it saved on here, so that it just goes out into the world that we have to do this.
Yeah, but here's the thing. We need to match our excitement with people that are just so uninterested or don't believe, so that we have a glimmer of something happening. Because if it's me, you, and people that are equally excited, we're not going to get anything. We're going to be ramped up, and no ghost is going to care to come visit us.
That's true. I almost want to do something even crazier, like play with like a Ouija board in a site where they said ghosts have been.
Yeah.
Just go that crazy. Because I feel like that's like the spooky season thing we have to do.
Did I tell you that we got a Ouija board one day?
Did I tell you I own a Ouija board?
No, but we didn't. Sorry, let me rephrase. Because did you go out and purchase a Ouija board?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did not purchase it. It showed up. So this was when we lived downtown. We lived in this apartment building, and we were on the first floor. Yeah. And a Ouija board just appeared outside our sliding door, like for the backyard.
What?
Yes. Which obviously then my cousins were obviously messing with me, maybe. But we like hung on to it for a bit, and then we passed it on like we should. We put it on someone else's deck.
What? Why wasn't it my deck?
Well, I didn't know you then. I was also a kid that didn't have a car, so trying to make it out to Souk would have been a little difficult.
That would have been tough. That would have been tough. Who knows? We still, yeah, it's funny best friend story here, guys. We don't know when we met, so you could have known me then. I don't know.
Very true. I could have, but I clearly did not know enough or know where you lived enough to drop off a Ouija board. But and hopefully that Ouija board has continued to circulate.
I hope so. I hope that's a traveling Ouija board that's like been part of many ghost stories.
You and me both.
All right, before I let you go, is there anywhere we can find you online or you'd like to be found online? Because I've asked this question before. People have been like, nope. So I just thought I would ask, is there anywhere you'd like to be found online? If not, is there anything you'd like to promote before you go from any cause or anything?
Instagram, I only have for Ava photos. So I've got an Instagram, but I promise you're never going to see anything posted from me on there. And trying to think, I guess it's a shameless plug. I'll plug my brother because he's got a show tomorrow night, but this won't be out by then. But I'm sure he'll have another show on the horizon. But Wunmi Musaku on Instagram, he does comedy and he's sometimes funny.
He's really funny. She's underselling. He's really funny. He's absolutely great. So yeah, please, I will put his name in the show notes in lieu of Luna's name. What a great promotion.
I mean, I'm hoping he makes it someday so that I can finally cash in, but.
You think he'd give you money if he cashed in? If you was Kevin Hart?
I've continuously, I just keep telling him what my title will be when he's super famous and makes millions.
Yeah, you do all his fashion, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Joel. Thank you. That's what I insist on as well. But
yeah. Well, see. You have an absolute promise for me that when my movies are coming out, that you get to work on the sets of those and you could do my passion forever. So
I cannot wait.
That's an absolute promise that's here, but you already knew that from me.
I mean, yes, definitely. But at least now the masses have heard it as well.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, for me, you know where to find me. If you don't, because it's your first time listening, you can find me at West Coast Strange on both Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Sometimes I don't really do Twitter as much, but Facebook and Instagram definitely. It's at West Coast Strange, all one word. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. And I promised I'd give you some more episodes soon. His House is currently on Netflix, and I recommend watching it as soon as possible. The movie is absolutely amazing. Luna, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.